When Elon Musk acquired Twitter in late 2022, he quickly fired half of the company's workforce and soon after sent an internal email to remaining employees. "We will need to be extremely hardcore. This will mean working long hours at high intensity," he wrote in the email. Then he gave employees two options. Click on a link to indicate your agreement with these working conditions or leave the company. By no means was this a traditional company request or an attempt to get approval. It was an ultimatum. Explicit within the email was that working at Twitter won't be for everyone, but some staff will be willing to work beyond their contracted hours, possibly to the point of physical and mental exhaustion. The idea of working long hours and at high intensity is routinely criticized. However, on the flip side, it's also routinely encouraged. The hashtag grind has over 8 billion views on TikTok. The hashtag hustle has over 28 million posts on Instagram. Influential individuals within business, sport, and entertainment regularly reveal how they push themselves to the limit, and people often discuss burning out like it's a badge of honor. So how did we get here? Why is there a culture of glorification towards long working hours, or as some publications put it, a cult of overwork? And where is it leading us? Eating lunch at your desk, coming home late, answering emails at midnight. These experiences are applauded in today's hustle and grind-set culture, and their rising familiarity among many workers suggests it's becoming more normalized. But are we actually working longer hours? If we go back 150 years and look at certain Western countries, the data indicates the answer is a resounding no. In the United States, for example, the average worker worked 3,096 hours per year in 1870. By 2017, that figure had plummeted to 1,757. Similarly, in Germany, the average worker worked 3,284 hours per year in 1870. By 2017, that figure was a shadow of its former self at 1,354 hours. So what caused this considerable decline in working hours? Much like we talk about how technology is changing the world today, in the 1700s and 1800s, the onset of the Industrial Revolution would change the world in unimaginable ways. Britain, Europe, and the United States were mainly agriculture-based societies in which the majority of the population lived in rural areas. Most goods were produced through manual labor and hand production. But that all changed as we learned how to harness the technologies of water and steam power, and later fossil fuels, onto machinery and mass production. The world would be transformed forever. People, products, and food could travel vast distances more quickly than they ever could before. Workers flooded into urban centers as employment opportunities grew. The global population exploded from 600 million in 1700 to 1.65 billion in 1900, over 5 times more growth in only 200 years than in the 10,000 years of the previous millennium, and prevailing theories of economics had to be fundamentally altered in view of the changing world at the time. But while production grew, working conditions left a lot to be desired. In industrial areas of Britain, children were put to work in factories on average at the age of 8.5 years old. Workers were often abused and violently mistreated. People had to work in dangerous conditions with poor ventilation, exposure to heavy metals, with little job security, low pay, and long working hours, having to tolerate this exploitation because they had little other choice. The unacceptable nature of these working conditions gave rise to laws and regulations that protected workers' rights, and alongside technological advancement and changes in societal norms led to a drastic decline in working hours. But while working hours have declined, it's important to note that the figures are on average. Some industries and professions are notorious for their brutal work weeks. It also depends on which countries we're looking at. With the data available to us, we can see that working hours in Bangladesh have increased. The same can be said for Cambodia, whose hours in 2017 were close to double those of Germany. And if we hone in on a particular time frame, for example from the early to late 2000s, working hours have actually increased in richer countries including the US, UK, Sweden, Netherlands, and New Zealand. One rationale for this is that while the Industrial Revolution led to a surge in working hours, we're now in the middle of another revolution, the digital revolution, the information age, whatever you want to call it. From accessing content to ordering meals, we're connected 24 hours a day, even with our workplaces. This simultaneous long-term decline and recent resurgence in working hours may help provide some insight as to why there's a culture of awe, glorification, and respect for long working hours. Long working hours are marketed in such a way as to make it seem not everyone can do it. It's for the select few.
Getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day before anybody else.
So I just work every day, every hour of the day, until I just burn out.
It's supposedly a differentiator setting you apart from the rest, a characteristic not everyone has and a demonstration of your superhuman commitment. We're told that working long hours is how we achieve success, or at least society's definition of success.
I've never met anybody in my entire life who can work 18 hours a day, every day, forever, until they die. That's me.
As Elon Musk tweeted, nobody ever changed the world on 40 hours a week. 80 hours and often going up to 100 hours is where the magic happens. The New Yorker put it succinctly in that bankers and Wall Street firms have traditionally had an unspoken pact. For a shot at obscene wealth, workers agree to put in 15 hours a day and forego anything resembling a normal life. We glorify long working hours because it's glorified for us. The media would report on how Elizabeth Holmes, founder of Theranos, the blood testing startup once valued at $9 billion, would work 7 days a week, purposefully limit her sleep, avoid vacations, and conflate her work life with her personal life. Similarly, the media reported how Sam Bankman-Fried, the founder of cryptocurrency exchange FTX, once valued at $32 billion, slept only 4 hours a night on a beanbag in his office. These reports were often published in a positive light, and alongside these descriptions of extreme working hours were adulations of Elizabeth Holmes being the next Steve Jobs and Sam Bankman-Fried being the next Warren Buffett. Both were showered with praise, with Forbes Under 30 awards, and Time magazine listed them both in their list of the 100 most influential people. At the time of this recording, to put it mildly, neither Elizabeth Holmes nor Sam Bankman-Fried hold the esteemed positions they once had. Perhaps long working hours are glorified because they're seen as a requirement for companies to get to that next level. One extreme example of this, former Chief Operating Officer of Theranos, Sunny Balwani, would place himself in a glass conference room and stare out at his employees to ensure no one was slacking off, even going so far as to examining security logs and footage to see when workers were entering and leaving. As John Carreyrou wrote in his book Bad Blood, employees were his minions. He expected them to be at his disposal at all hours of the day or night and on weekends. On a less extreme level but still indicative of the attitudes of high potential companies, at WeWork, a co-working company once valued at $47 billion, staff were expected to work 60 hours a week and were chastised for leaving at 6:30 in the evening. In a world where politics and connections can be just as or even more important than the work you put in, perhaps we glorify long working hours as a way to demonstrate we climbed up the ladder deservedly. Rebekah Neumann, the wife of the then WeWork CEO Adam Neumann, said in an interview with Couture magazine in 2016, "There's no job too big or too small for each person. Everyone is doing everything. We were the ones scrubbing all the glass dividers and cleaning the floors at night. We'd stay up until 4 or 5 in the morning, sometimes when we were going to open the next day." Interestingly, people who were there in those early days fixing up offices late into the night don't recall Rebekah's presence. The point here is not to confirm whether she was or wasn't there in those days, but to point out that there's substantial value attributed to being seen as someone who's put in the long hours. In this context, long working hours are glorified to convey climbing up the ladder through meritocratic means, not through nepotism. On a side note, however, and somewhat ironically when it comes to WeWork, at its peak level of hype, workers felt it was proximity to CEO Adam Neumann that was key to advancement in the company. Several executives suggested that his true superpower was his occasional lack of concern for the personal lives of those around him, and he once raised a toast to one of his key executives, to nepotism. As much as there's a culture that glorifies overwork, there are those who are doing it sometimes with little say in the matter, and their experience doesn't always align with the glamorized hustle and grind set posts we see on today's social media. In China, for example, 996 working schedules are widespread. 996 refers to working hours imposed on staff from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week, or at least a 60-hour work week. The campaign website to protest 996 puts the matter concisely. If you continue to tolerate the 996 work schedule, you will risk your own health and might need to stay in an intensive care unit someday. A research paper published in 2020 suggests power differences between managers and staff in certain organizations provides managers with the opportunity to exploit staff in a substantially unrestricted manner, and coupled with a culture of silence and obedience, 996 constitutes a form of modern slavery. In Japan, many have seen images of salarymen sleeping on the streets. Taking time off is seen as a negative signal, whereas sacrificing leisure time is seen as a signal of motivation and loyalty to the company. Long working hours are so ingrained in the system that there's actually a specific word, Karoshi, that means death by overwork. And while Karoshi is a Japanese word, it certainly isn't a Japanese-only phenomenon. Equivalent words exist in both South Korea and China, with a highly publicized case being the electronics manufacturing company Foxconn that makes the Apple iPhone and Amazon Kindle. Overwork has been so bad that the company went as far as to installing nets outside its buildings to prevent workers from jumping out and taking their own lives. All of this leads one to consider that perhaps the glorification of long working hours is a phenomenon restricted to those who have a choice and when it is temporary. And we don't have to limit our analysis to Asian companies alone. In March 2021, an internal survey at Goldman Sachs was leaked, in which staff described the effects of a work schedule that could go up to 120 hours a week. My body physically hurts all the time and mentally I'm in a really dark place. Being unemployed is less frightening to me than what my body might succumb to if I keep up this lifestyle. This is beyond the level of hard working. This is inhumane abuse. It's likely respondents of this survey weren't posting images on Instagram about #thathustleLife. And then there's the research, with the World Health Organization describing long working hours as a serious health hazard that can lead to premature death, and estimates that it took 740,000 lives in 2016. But for anyone who's been burnt out from long working hours, we don't need research to tell us it's not a pleasant experience and can often defeat the purpose of those extra hours in the first place, i.e. by harming our productivity. The law of diminishing returns applies. Let's say you are an article writer and you're publishing one article a day. You then decide to work a few extra hours and manage to publish 2 articles a day. Spurred on by that increased output, you increase your hours even more. But at some point, more hours don't result in more articles. Maybe you start feeling tired, the lack of sleep starts getting to you, you're unable to concentrate as well as you could before, to the point where all those extra hours aren't producing the results you intended. While there's evidence to suggest overwork can be counterproductive, there's also some evidence pointing out that deliberately restricting working hours can be beneficial. The 4-day-week Global Foundation conducted a 4-day, 32-hour workweek trial with 33 companies, which resulted in increased revenues, reduced absenteeism, and almost all companies planning to continue with the 4-day-week schedule. So although glorification of overwork continues to be prevalent, society also seems to be pushing back. Many people can probably think of instances when they were looking for a job and tolerated inexcusable behavior from the hiring company, but accepted it because they needed the job. In many respects, the tables seem to be turning, with phenomena such as the rise of freelancing. The balance of power isn't as lopsided in favor of companies as it once was, particularly in the past few years when many people have taken time to reassess their life priorities. When Elon Musk gave Twitter employees the option to stay or leave, over 1,000 people decided they didn't want to be hardcore and resigned. When founder of Alibaba Jack Ma called 996 work schedules a huge blessing, he was widely criticized on Chinese social media, and state media even chimed in calling 996 arrogant, unfair, and impractical. Although there's still resistance, companies and countries are opening up to the idea of greater employee freedom, exemplified by the growing number of locations offering digital nomad visas. People have a greater sense of empowerment, and the glorification of hustle culture is being counterbalanced by other movements such as quiet quitting, which refers to doing just enough to get the job done but no more, and is estimated to encompass at least 50% of the US workforce. In coming to the end of this video, it's worth pointing out that there can be a case for long working hours. When an individual has a goal, there are times when the hustle and grind are needed and can be beneficial. Things sometimes have to be pushed beyond the norm to achieve the extraordinary. Some of the most successful sports people have had incredible work ethics, and tolerance to long working hours will differ between individuals. Some researchers also contend that more research needs to be done to establish stronger correlations between overwork and negative health outcomes. But when it comes to the glorification of overwork, the cult of overwork, toil, glamour, performative workaholism, whatever you want to call it, the glorification seems to be skewed towards those who have a choice and often neglects those who do not. When long working hours are imposed upon employees with little opportunity to take time off, it's hard to imagine those working in poorly ventilated sweatshops in Bangladesh and crowded garment factories in Cambodia posting about that hustle life. As the New York Times said, it's not difficult to view hustle culture as a swindle. After all, convincing a generation of workers to beaver away is convenient for those at the top. As working hours show signs of increase galvanized by our hyperconnectivity, it's also coming into conflict with movements of greater employee empowerment. Hustle culture is being glorified and simultaneously being torn down. And as we progress through the 2020s, it remains to be seen where this conflict will take us.